Alright, so in this video we're going to be showing you how to mount our FT radial motors to a firewall. Now the FT radials can mount in two different ways. We can use the included X mount, or we can mount it through the rear with our 2mm button head screws. All this is included with our FT radial motors. Along with that, we're going to show you how to hook up the ESC to the motor and how to change the directions of the motor by simply swapping out two wire leads. So first things first, let's go ahead and open up our motor and we'll show you all the different pieces that are going to come with this kit. We're going to have our main motor, we're going to have our hardware, we're going to have our lock nut, and we're also going to have our X mount. This hardware is going to give you wood screws, and it's also going to give you various types and various lengths of mounts here to be able to mount your firewall, whether it's through the X mount or whether it's through the back surface of your motor. To mount our included X mount, we'll take our X mount and we'll line it up, noticing that if we don't have it correctly, the holes aren't going to line up. Or you keep the beveled edge out, and using the included beveled screws, line them in. Take our screwdriver, and the very important thing to do is don't tighten down your screws until you get all four of your screws threaded. Once we have all four down, we can go back and snug them up. You're always welcome to use a little bit of blue Loctite if you wish to make these stick a little bit better. There we go. Now that we have our X mount, we can line this up directly over the holes. And this is where we're going to use our included wood screws that you see here. Line up the hole. I like to just get them started. And we'll do this on all four. Once all four screws have been started, go back and then finish off by tightening them down firmly. Now with all of our speed build kits and all of our firewall designs, you have the ability to be able to mount your motor directly to the firewall using the four holes on the back. Now keep in mind that two holes are 16mm and the other two holes are 19mm. If you lay this down and it doesn't match up perfectly, just simply rotate it 90 degrees. Along with our motors, you're going to find button head 2mm screws. These are specifically for mounting directly to the firewall. We also have a 2mm Allen key. All we simply need to do is start all four screws. We're not going to tighten these down until all four screws are threaded. Once all four screws are threaded, you can go back and we can tighten them down. This is a real handy way to be able to mount your motors directly to the firewall without using the included X mount. Along with our motor power packs, we also have an ESC. An ESC is going to control the speed of the motor and then tie directly to our receiver. Now with the ESC, depending on how we hook it up, it will affect the direction of the motor. The first thing we want to do is we want to connect the 3 bullet connectors from our motor in any order that you see fit, like you see here. To test the direction of the motor, we could simply plug this into our receiver, but we can also use a servo tester that we have here and plug it into the side. Notice that whenever we plug it in, the ground wire is always going to go with the minus, the red wire in the middle is going to be the plus, and either the white or the orange wire is going to be for the signal. Now we're going to go ahead and take our battery, we're going to plug it in, and right now our servo tester is on manual and it's turned all the way down. Now for typical tractor configuration motors, you're going to want the prop to go counterclockwise. Now the way that you tell the rotation of the prop is actually going to be standing in front of the prop as if you're a prop in the plane for real. So for this case to go counterclockwise, if we're facing the motor, we want the propeller to go to our left as if the hands of the clock are counting from 12 down to 1. For clockwise, it's the exact opposite. The only time you'll typically have a prop going clockwise is if you're in a pusher configuration or if you have a twin motor setup. So this specific motor application, we're going to be setting it up for a tractor configuration, which means the motor is going to be in front of the plane pulling it through just like a tractor would pull a wagon. So what we want to see is we want to see the prop move in this direction here. So as I turn this on slightly and just look for the rotation, you're going to see that the rotation is going this direction. You can always put a little piece of tape on the edge of the shaft and let it spin to see which way it's going. But just by starting and stopping, it's very easy to see it's moving this way. Now that's obviously the wrong direction we want. We want this to spin to the left. So to change direction, all we need to do is change any of the 2 of the 3 wires and swap them out. So I'm gonna just pick this one here. I'm gonna unplug this one here. And now I'm gonna take this lead that I just unplugged from here and I'm gonna put it on and just swap them. Now when I check this out, we're now counterclockwise. All right, at this point, our motor is now ready to install in the airplane. The way that we're gonna install this is by using extra servo screws that will screw through these 4 holes here into the firewall mounted on the airplane. So make sure you save those servo screws because they're gonna come in use later. So we're gonna be using the Trojan today as kind of our example of how we mount, but all the Master Series that have this firewall and this X mount are gonna mount the exact same way. One thing that we're going to take careful note of, it's always a good idea to make sure, just like we did earlier, that the motor's moving the proper direction. It's a lot harder once it's in to change directions. Now every airplane may be different, but what we want to focus on is trying to make sure that the routing of our ESC and our motor wires aren't going to conflict with where we put the battery. For the Trojan here specifically, the battery is mounted to the bottom, so we're going to favor this to the top and mount to the top. Now if the battery mounts to the top, of course we're going to want to favor it towards the sides or the bottom. So I'm going to guide this in here. Real easy way to kind of get all this lined up is to pre-thread all of our screws so there's a little bit of tiny thread sticking through. That'll really help us line up with the other side. Again, these are servo screws that we don't use that are actually included with our power packs, and they're inside the servo boxes of our FT 9 grams, our FT ESO 802s, our 9051s, and our 17 gram servos. And now I'm just going to carefully line this up. And with those pre-threaded screws, it's just going to pop. There's 1, there's 2, 3, and 4. Now all we simply need to do is just screw each screw in. Make sure you don't over tighten, but also make sure it's nice and snug. Now this type of mount is going to be very common all the way from our Mighty Minis all the way through the Master Series. So anytime that you see an X mount of this style, this is exactly how you're going to put it on. Now, a really important thing, it may be tempting to put your prop on at this point, but I want to encourage you, do not put your prop on until just before flight. It's really important with your radio setup and everything that the prop is not on to keep you and those around you safe. Once we make all of our connections with our receiver, we can then go ahead and dress the ESC and fasten it firmly against the part of the fuselage that we wish to make sure we can easily install the battery and also remove it. We're ready to move on to our next portion of the build.